Sure you get the other few back.
Yeah. Hold on, Jill's calling me. We're having technical difficulties. Oh, we're on.
And we are live.
Oh, we're live. Okay.
We are live. Thank you, Dr. Ezzy. We're good.
Hey,
Okay.
every now and again, a superintendent like.
All right, I think we're live, everybody.
They can say all they like.
Top of this list.
Thank you for your patience as we worked everything out.
Thank you.
Good morning. It's Thursday, June 13th. This is a special Darien Board of Education Curriculum Committee meeting. In the interest of everybody's time, and making sure that everybody around the table can get back into their buildings as quickly as possible, we are going to switch the order of the agenda, if that is okay with everybody, and start with the curriculum writing and revision update. Before we do that, I just want to make sure that I thank Dr. Fedigan for her work this year. You've come into the district with some really excellent energy, and thank you very much for doing the excellent curriculum work that you've been doing. So we'll move on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm welcome I've had in Darien Public Schools. I'm so excited about the work of this teaching and learning team. We've accomplished a lot of great work. There was a lot of great work that we had to build upon, and I see a lot of great work for us in the future. Today is a very exciting day in the district, and seeing our students' outcomes certainly is the reason why we write curriculum, why we want to make sure we have strong curricular experiences to prepare our students for today and tomorrow, wherever their paths may take them. So today for the curriculum, as you mentioned, Mrs. Parent, we were switching the agenda up, and we're going to start with a brief presentation on our curriculum writing and revision work. And one of the things I just want to point out, and my colleagues here, this wonderful and talented curriculum instruction assessment and professional learning team, I'll say, will kind of help bring us through what our work has been over the last several months. You'll hear us talk about curriculum. You'll hear us talk about understanding by design, which is a framework for writing curriculum, and you'll hear us talk about EduPlanet. These are three very different things. So EduPlanet is the place where we store curriculum. My colleagues will go into greater detail with that. Curriculum written by UBD is the framework with which we write and approach curriculum. And so that's really, there's a strong connection to our instructional efforts there. It's a very intentional design. And then our curriculum writing and revision cycle brings systemic thinking to this work, so that then we can think very clearly about instructional strategies that we use, how we align professional learning efforts, and certainly how we align budget and budget priorities to support the work. So one of the things that we'll learn about today is that there are 3 stages of curriculum writing. Again, I want to make sure that I'm really clear. Those 3 stages are different than this cycle of developing curriculum. It would not be reasonable for a school district to write curriculum every 3 years across all departments. Standards don't typically change that quickly. In addition, you wouldn't want to be having an overhaul with staff. The capacity wouldn't be there. We want to really settle into strong, viable, and rigorous curriculum that we write. And in addition, you wouldn't have the financial or human resources to do something like that. So you want to have a very clear pattern and rhythm to writing curriculum, so that there's a continuum and articulation from preschool through grade 12. And one of the exciting things that we're going to talk about today is opening EduPlanet. One of the first things I heard upon arriving to Darien was, how can we make sure that the curriculum is not only robust, but really transparent and available to our families in the community? So the work of this team has made that possible this year, and we'll talk about our work moving forward in 24-25 to continue in those efforts. One of the things that we want to be clear about is we do have a long-term transfer goal. Long-term transfer goal is actually language that is borrowed and adopted from UBD, that framework for design and writing of curriculum. And a long-term transfer goal is a goal that you have for a learner that they can apply to a novel or new experience. So standards are important, discrete skills are important, but we want our learners to be able to apply what they've learned in unique and new settings and new experiences as they navigate the world around them. One of the things that is really important is, and we were just actually on Tuesday night talking about the strategic plan, is thinking about how does this work align to the priorities within our strategic plan. So if you think about goal 1, enhancing teaching and learning, having a viable curriculum, that's the backbone and foundation of a school system. That completely articulates what we want our students to know and be able to do as a result of their experiences as they move through the system. Certainly, goal 3, vision of the graduate, speaks in many ways to transfer goals, because those are different. It's a different level of dispositions that we want our learners to be able to apply their learning with, for example, curiosity and independence and creativity. And then finally, goal 4, there's a really tight alignment here. Each time I'm at the board table and I'm talking about curriculum, and there's a very tight connection to curriculum, instructional strategies, and assessment, I'm always mentioning the tight alignment between curriculum and professional learning. When we think about content and what we want to experience, what we want our learners to experience, we have to lead with learning with the adults first. That means not only teachers, but all of us as administrators. We have to support adult learning because adult learning begets our student learning efforts. One of the things I'll mention about vision of the graduate and thinking about multiple measures to account for student success and the success of our school district is beyond standardized test scores. We need to be able to ensure that our curriculum provides opportunities for our kids to demonstrate transfer goals and to demonstrate those attributes of vision of the graduate as they move through the system. And that really should begin in preschool. So preschool through grade 2, when you think about the significant learning bands, grades 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, there should be aligned experiences throughout the curriculum across departmental areas, across disciplines that allow our young learners to demonstrate those competencies. I'm going to pass the clicker down to my colleagues who will bring us through some other elements of curriculum writing. And again, this just what Keith is going to talk about speaks to really the systemic implementation of preschool through grade 12 across all departments in the system.
Right. Great. Good morning. So when we look at this graphic, the curriculum writing and revision cycle, our curricula from every department is going to fit somewhere in this 7-year cycle. And I draw your attention to start to the keystone area, the impetus for change. There is something that's going to drive forward the work that we do with revising and reviewing our curriculum. It could be something like new state standards have been released. It could be something like there is a new approach to teaching in a given field. And it could also be that nothing major has happened and 7 years has gone through and it's time for us to review and take a close look at our curriculum. Once we move past that, we're going to move into establishing some of those core goals that we have to for the class, things like the key skills, the key content, the transfer goals that Dr. Fettigan was talking about before. Once we have that established, we move into creating the assessments that we'll use to determine whether students have actually been able to make those gains that the class has set out to do. And once we have that, we look into the year 3 full implementation part of this, where what we're looking at there is the actual learning plan. So what happens on the day-to-day basis in order to accomplish all that we've set forward. And then beyond that, now we're actually living that curriculum. Every year, there may be reasons to look closely at it if a school schedule is changing, if there are other changes that are taking place in other grades where there may be iterative units that may have a ripple effect. Those sorts of things are always going to be considered. But we do have this 7-year cycle now. And at the core of this is that vision of the graduate. And as Dr. Fettigan said, supporting that are the teaching and learning principles, as well as that professional learning that has to take place to ensure we can accomplish all of this across the board with all of the teachers in all of our departments. And here you can see some of the core philosophies of understanding by design. And I'll draw your attention to a few of the key words in here. In the first and second, the words deepening, application, and transfer are really important, because what we're really trying to do here is give students an opportunity to learn the content, the skills that they need to apply to new novel settings, to new experiences that will help them in their future careers as students and in their actual jobs. Beyond this, it's really important to note that we do have this backward planning approach within understanding by design. We don't start with what will the daily lessons be and then figure out what the assessment will look like after that. We start with what are the biggest ideas of the course, What will the assessment look like for that course, for that unit rather? And then what will the learning plan be to get us through all of that? That's why teachers are looked at as coaches. They're coaching understanding, trying to get students to apply that information that they're being asked to work with. The last two points on here that I think are worth noting are the review and the regular look at student work that takes place, as well as the sharing, the ability to share this information through EduPlanet 21. So once we do have our curriculum, quote unquote, written, we do regularly look at this to see, are the students getting what we're hoping they're getting? Do we need to make any shifts? Are there any changes that have to take place? And EduPlanet 21, as my colleagues will talk about in just a moment, will give us the opportunity to make that very transparent and very visible to all the teachers in the district and all of the families in the district and any of the stakeholders in the district.
Sir? Okay, so these are the three stages of UVD. And as you can see, you've heard my colleagues talk about backwards planning. So this is what it looks like. We start with the desired results. What do we want our students to learn? That's where we think about standards. That's where we think about vision of the graduate. That's where we think about skills that we want our kids to learn. And then once we've established that, then we design some sort of an assessment that will be the acceptable evidence that will reveal whether or not our students have mastered what we want them to master. And then step 3 is to plan basically your lessons around leading students toward that mastery. Now, I hope you can see that this is not exactly rocket science, right? And so I'm just going to give you one little example so I can show you like why this is important. And it goes like this. I mean, understanding by design has been around since the late 90s. So any teacher within the last, say, 15 years is probably has taken a course and been exposed to it. Not that they're a master of it, but they've been exposed to it. So I would say in our district, there's a lot of like teachers say my age who haven't. So it's new to some, it's not new to others. And I think that no teacher has necessarily mastered this approach. In English, I'll just say very briefly, we have a tendency to see books as our units, and thereby we move sequentially through chapter by chapter, and we want to cover, right, all of the chapter. One of the key words here, if you look under determining acceptable evidence, number 2 is the word mastery. If we want our students to master something, it needs to be emphasized and brought out on a daily basis. So when we start at the end and we think about what we're going to be doing for our performance task, and if we're doing the Great Gatsby, and rather than trying to cover every element of a given chapter, if we want to focus on the difference between social mobility and physical mobility, the automobile, that sort of thing, then we focus on those key scenes. We can do other things, but we want to make sure that kids are exposed to the key things that they're going to have to do something with at the very end. I'll move along to a little bit more in depth with stage 1. And by the way, all of the bolded terms here are heavily emphasized in EduPlanet, and stage 1 is the public-facing part of EduPlanet. But here you can see that when grade level teachers get together and they do the planning of the outcomes, they are thinking about the what and the why. They're thinking about the standards, the transfer goals, essential questions that are important for that given unit. And like, you know, exactly why are they important, and having those conversations and establishing those key things that we want kids to be able to do and to know. And then stages 2 and 3, once again, we're talking about designing authentic assessments and performance tasks. And notice performance task is not an essay or a test, right? It's a very different thing. You've heard Dr. Fettigan talk about applying the learning to a new situation. And that's what we're talking about with a performance task and trying to make that authentic. And then, of course, it's just a question, once those things are established, trying to come up with activities and learning experiences for our students that lead them to those outcomes.
Hi. So what this means for the instruction really is that our students, our learners have the opportunity to understand why they're doing what they're doing. It affects how we present the information in the class. So the focus is really on those essential understandings. Why are we doing what we're doing? If we were in a math class, rather than focus perhaps on y equals mx plus b, which doesn't mean much, their deeper understanding is what is a linear relationship and why are we doing this and how does it apply to real life? So we plan with that end goal in mind and differentiate and provide multiple entry points for our students to receive this information and also design authentic assessments along the way. And also, as my colleagues mentioned, as we look at that curriculum cycle, we're always updating and seeing if it's working and revise accordingly.
So there is a deep connection between the Understanding by Design curriculum process and EduPlanet 21. And I don't think our team, I think we realize that we haven't done a very good job differentiating that over the course of the past 2 or 3 years. And so this slide really is transitioning from what does it look like to design curriculum here in Darien and the process that we use to design curriculum to how do we share and how do we ensure that we're doing it in an aligned and cohesive manner across the district pre-K through 12. So to just touch upon EduPlanet 21 a little bit, this gives us the opportunity to look at the desired outcomes, the assessments, and that learning sequence in stage 3 and ensure that it is aligned top to bottom, but also that we are looking at alignment horizontally across courses in all of our grade levels. So this is a tool in which we can plan our courses. We can take a look and it gives us the ability to see where those standards hit in each of the units. We can see how our assessments align with each of those particular standards that we have identified in our desired outcomes. And it allows teachers to look at and look critically at the lessons that they plan and ensure that they align to the assessments. So that vertical alignment from the outcomes to the assessments to the learning plan can be highlighted and specifically tagged throughout EduPlanet 21. So it's an alignment tool that has been very helpful in terms of helping our teachers look and say, well, this in science, for example, this lab is great and kids love it and have a great time, but does it hit the desired outcomes? And will this activity allow our students to show mastery of those desired outcomes within the context of this unit? So it really is a tool for us to look at alignment. It's also a tool for us to share our resources, both with the community. I think Francis mentioned that those stage 1 documents, the learning outcomes, are essentially what we would like to share with the public. And so the public should have knowledge of those desired outcomes for every single unit across the district and every single course across the district, giving them a understanding of what their students are going to be expected to do at each step along the way, whether it be in English, science, math, social studies, world language, music, and performing arts. So that will be available. And what EduPlanet 21 does is it allows us, as Ronnie will talk about in a moment, it allows us to very easily show that information to our public. And then ultimately it gives us a aligned structure for our curriculum units that we can share with teachers, whether they are moving levels, whether they are coming into the district, whether they are taking a leave of absence and coming back and a new course has been developed. So it gives us an aligned and very simple structure for sharing that information and sharing the work of colleagues throughout the curriculum design process.
So as a district, as we said, EduPlanet 21 is the online platform that's going to house our curriculum in UBD format. So being online ensures that the most current version of our curriculum is always available, reducing confusion and ensuring consistency across the district. Anytime the curriculum gets updated, you will see it immediately. Real-time change with full transparency to all stakeholders. Teachers will save valuable time with easy access to the resources and streamlined objectives, state content standards, vision of the graduate competencies, all in one place, allowing them to focus on teaching and learning. Embracing this technology aligns with our commitment to providing the highest quality education for our students and supporting our teachers with the best tools available. As mentioned, we are growing our shared understanding of UBD design through professional learning, ELP, through GOE 12, and sharing this access. I'm happy to report, I think we've had over 100 educators across the district attend our professional learning sessions in UBD. If you bear with me a moment, I'll show you what it looks like. Christine, you guys be able to hear me okay? If you guys go to the district website, and you can see here just model, it may hover over teaching and learning.
Ronnie, I'm not sure that people like online will be able to hear you unless you're.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you hear me here?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So if you go to the website and you hover over teaching and learning, you will see now right there, district curriculum, that's brand new. And all you would have to do is click on district curriculum and that will open up our blueprint. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so there's our district blueprint. And I'm just going to let you know that if you scroll, you could see more domains. So there is from English language arts all the way to the ELP program and the gifted program. You'll see those domains there. All you would need to do is hover over each domain and that will reveal all the grades underneath that subject area and then the courses within those grades. I'm just going to show you math. Of course. So under math, and this would be true for all the other domains, there are all the grades showing. Once again, ELP isn't showing because that has its own box. But otherwise, you can see the grades, kindergarten all the way through up and including the high school elective. So if I were to hover over the high school electives, you would see all the math electives that are available at the high school. If I were to hover over ninth grade, you would see all the courses within ninth grade. So there are the courses for all of ninth grade. And if you wanted to dive a little bit deeper and you wanted to see, okay, what is Algebra 1 and what is that all about? So I just opened Algebra 1 and you can see for Algebra 1, there will be a course description. In addition, there will be 11 units that I have within Algebra 1 and those 11 unit descriptions you'll be able to see. By just clicking that view yellow box will open it up more. It's just condensed right now so you can see it all. And if you wanted to go even further and go into a particular unit, I believe I did, that looks like from far away, linear value, literal equations. Okay, absolute value. Ooh, glad. Okay. So this is that stage 1 that my colleagues was referring to that you will see. So right within that one click, you will see the unit focus. You will see the content state standards that that unit supports. You will see the vision of the graduate competencies that we want to see highlighted within that unit, the long-term transfer goals, the understanding and essential questions that are within that unit. And the knowledge and skills that students would need to acquire within that unit. Also provided today, I did provide a hard copy completely of Algebra 1 if you wanted to look through it that has stage 1, 2, and 3 completed so you can see it from beginning to end. We would not want to show stage 2 and 3 since that includes assessments up here.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. So a lot of times around the board table, I've been asked the question of what percentage of the curriculum is done. So in connection to that curriculum writing and revision cycle, we have a district curriculum writing calendar. So we can see in alignment to, for example, the budget, what we've asked for with regard to resources, how we're planning professional learning, what's up next. In some of those areas, you might see the curriculum isn't quite developed as far yet. For example, ELP, we know we need to work this summer on developing curriculum that's reflective of play-based learning, for example. Health education at the elementary school needs to be further developed. So I will provide to the board a memo of the more significant and prominent content areas where more curriculum is developed, and to let you know by course what the percentage is of stage one. And we will continue to provide updates to the board as curriculum is developed, of course, ongoing. I am really proud of the fact that this team has been able to support, along with the building administration, professional learning in the last couple of weeks for 20% of our staff, and understanding what understanding by design is as a curriculum approach and why that's our approach in Darien Public Schools. So that has been some of our work to really build systems and structures to strengthen teaching and learning in Darien Public Schools. So take any questions.
Thank you, everybody. I think so EduPlan 21 is live now, or what?
Well,
What's the plan?
Well, so EduPlan, we're ready to hit live open. We wanted to make sure that we did this first at the board table. So
I
it's ready
think
to
that's
go.
really exciting that families can now see what the different standards and content, and I'm curious about the pragmatics of it. How specific does it get? We often get a question, and you guys often get questions about the artifacts that are used in certain classes. What level of specificity is included in EduPlanet 21 in terms of what the children are actually seeing, using, that kind of thing?
So some of the curricular resources, the more primary resources, for example, a textbook would certainly be referenced, but we trust the expertise of our educators, and there will be times where they'll draw in other resources, especially when you think about current events. They'll draw in other technologies, but of course we would always be striving for ongoing communication between our learners and our learners' families, so that there should be no surprises about what's happening in classrooms.
And if parents have questions about what they see on EduPlanet 21, where do they go?
So that's a fabulous question. Thank you for asking that. They should first, of course, go to the classroom teacher. We talked about this a little bit Tuesday night at the board table. The best way to understand what's happening in a classroom or to provide feedback to a teacher is through that direct conversation. We want to engage with families about what children are learning and how they can continue to support children's growth within the curriculum, even beyond the walls and hours of the school day.
If I can just add one thing, that the stage 3 document and the stage 3 learning plan is essentially a commitment on the behalf of our teachers to ensure that these critical learning activities are being implemented in the classroom. So that what it is not is a day-to-day set of lesson plans. And so one of the pieces of our professional learning with our teachers is to really highlight that and ensure that they have an understanding that what they plan on a day-to-day basis needs to be aligned with the assessments that have been agreed upon within the unit, and that those assessments have been created to assess the outcomes identified in stage 1. So we may have 6 to 8 or 12 learning activities within a unit, but that does not guarantee that what you walk into in the classroom is going to be exactly the same every single day. So we believe that our staff is highly creative and is focused on providing the students in their classroom the best possible experience, and creating boxed or canned lessons is not going to be able to do that to the best of our ability. So I think that's one thing that we haven't hit upon, but it's certainly something that we talk about in our professional learning experiences for our teachers.
I think that's an important piece too, that it is creative, and it can change depending on the needs of a particular class. So this is not a script for what's exactly happening. Dr. Adley, in terms of communication with families and stakeholders, what's the plan of, how you're rolling this out to everybody?
Well,
Before you, may I add,
Yeah.
Dr. Lee, before you roll it, I want to say one piece to the UBD. Francis touched on it, but how it provides for learning styles, which is really something to embrace in UBD. Francis, you spoke about performance tasks. Actually, Kristen, you mentioned also, but it really provides opportunities for students to use their preferred modalities of how to show what they know. So assessment's not limited to pencil and paper tasks. It allows for performance. It allows for, they may show it in their artistic manners, they may show it in their linguistic manners, or they may show it in their dramatic manners. But it really does change assessment and the way we look at it at the other end. So I just want to point that it really does offer that modality opportunity for learners.
Thank you for pointing that out, Shirley.
Sorry, Dr. Adley, just didn't want to miss that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Amy, can you talk a little bit about why you are focusing on UBD over UDL and some of the differences?
So it's not that we're focusing necessarily on UBD over UDL, but UBD was the primary approach to writing curriculum in the framework that was introduced to the district. I think probably for the last at least 3 years, this has been a focus of the teaching and learning department. UBD and UDL kind of dovetail really nicely. UDL is really about the access piece, ensuring that all of our learners have access to the curriculum, that they can, it's about engagement and representation within the curriculum. So that is something that we're continuing to learn about as a curriculum team. We haven't introduced that concept of UDL to our staff at large yet. UBD is the actual approach of designing the curriculum, not just about access, but what is the solid framework that you're using to ensure that you're hitting all of the standards, that you're hitting the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that you would want for your learners in an articulation preschool through grade 12. UDL will get to the access piece. So one of the things that I would envision is similar to how we are referencing Vision of the Graduate in that stage 1 blueprint. As we continue to develop and learn a little bit more about UDL, we should be referencing those tenets of UDL, for example, representation and engagement, right on that stage 1 template.
So just to clarify, you expect the UDL component to be incorporated like as you get further in the process?
Yeah. And again, that would be woven into stage 1, where we would be explicit about calling out what are the intentional access points. How do we ensure that our children have engagement within the lesson and representation? For example, those 2 frames.
Greg, I can't see you, but I understand you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Thanks.
Oh, great. So I just have a couple of thoughts. One is it relates to the vision of the graduate, kind of the end goal for this. There isn't anything of the graduate academics, performance. So I'm just struggling a little bit to understand why that.
Greg, you're breaking up a little bit. We can't really hear you completely. We hear like every third word. Sorry. Keep trying. Try again.
How's that?
Better. Thank you.
So I was just referring to the vision of the graduate as being the end goal for some of this. There isn't anything in the vision of the graduate related to academics or academic performance. We're just struggling a little bit to understand why that's one of the primary drivers of the end goal here. And then it seemed like there were some subtle references during the presentation towards moving a little bit away from testing as a means to assess students' understanding of curriculum towards more subjective measures. I just want to, as a board and district, I just want to make sure that we're going to continue to monitor academic performance, as measured by testing as a tool, as this tool is incorporated. And then the last thing is just a question in terms of burden on teachers, whether it's professional development or otherwise. And that was a key point of feedback that we heard loud and clear during the budget process. I just want to understand if that's going to be impactful on the teachers or not.
I can respond to those 3 points. With regard to vision of the graduate, in thinking about striving for excellence in the school system, it is our desire to ensure that students demonstrate excellence and aptitude on standardized assessments for sure. But that is a very flat and one-dimensional way for children to demonstrate what they know. Application is really what is important with regard to learning. Application is where children make meaning of what they learn and know, and where they create and innovate new ideas. For example, the standards in mathematics, there are content standards and then there are math practice standards. Both are equally important. The math content standards, and I'm sure Ronnie could do, as a world language person, she could do this much more I think, probably accurately than I can, but what I'll say is those are like the discrete standards and skills that we would expect children to learn. For example, algebraic expressions. For example, understanding base 10, being able to identify numbers in the lower grades. There are math practice standards that have to do with, for example, persevering in problem solving. Both of those things are important, and both of those things are academically related and would speak to children, I think, attaining success and excellence. As far as testing, standardized testing, I'm sure will always be a part of public school education. It's a way to not only measure individual student achievement and aptitude, but also for us to reflect on the effectiveness of our curriculum. So standardized assessments will absolutely be a part of our continued profile of how we view student achievement and also success of our curriculum. And with regard to burden of the teachers, I was really glad that Christian mentioned before that what is built in EduPlanet for the teachers in stages 2 and 3 provides a very clear guide on what the assured experiences should be in the classroom. And so that provides not a day-to-day exact missive on what teachers should be doing, because we want our teachers, and we know that our teachers can and do respond to the students before them, but it provides sufficient scaffolding and enough support so that teachers have very clear and solid direction about what they're meant to do and accomplish with our students and what kinds of resources we will be using. So I would say that that takes the burden off of teachers because there is much greater clarity on what's meant to be accomplished in the classroom. And it also helps because then our, for example, second grade teachers know what came out of first grade, right? It provides that articulation all the way through the grades.
Robin.
I wanted to get into, is this on? In this, what does UBD mean for instruction? You're talking about how allowing students to show their understanding in multiple ways, foster curiosity through active learning. A lot of times the rubrics that we're using for grading, especially in the more subjective subjects, seem to be very formulaic. And the question I have is that in my experience, it doesn't seem that teachers are necessarily grading for the level of difficulty, for example, in a certain topic. For instance, if a student decides that, and again, this gets to also vision of the graduate skills in terms of academic curiosity, creativity, and the level of difficulty, which would get to the independence kind of piece, especially as we are potentially allowing for different entry points and different levels of students within the same course, and trying to differentiate instruction or allow, for instance, more experienced or more advanced learners to choose a topic that might actually be significantly more difficult versus other students in the same class that might be choosing a topic that is a little bit easier. And then if you apply the same rubric for grading purposes to all of those students, how are we, or are the teachers taking into account in their grading the fact that some of the students might have had a much, much more difficult kind of task to, for example, prove their thesis or do the research to come up with, defining arguments. And I would think that as a school, we would want to encourage students to challenge themselves and to try to achieve and kind of maybe take a little bit bigger academic risk. But if you're using a very formulaic rubric, sometimes the outcome of that, especially as we use more technology and apps to do the grading, and where you basically see something in a chat that doesn't really give a lot of very, explicit feedback from a teacher. How are we kind of taking that into account as we create the assessments so that we encourage our students to continue to challenge themselves, take academic risks, because you don't want them then to say, okay, well, then my grades are going to be really low because I really tried to challenge myself and it was extremely difficult. And I just want to make sure that the content and the grading, the way the teachers approach this also takes into account the risk, the academic kind of heights that the students are trying to reach. And this probably, it doesn't have to do necessarily as much with math as it would potentially with English or history or some of the more subjective subjects. I just was curious on how you're approaching that.
One of the things I would say is the standards are the floor, right? That's not the ceiling of what we want our kids to accomplish. So the standards are the floor, and we ensure that our students are making progress and the standards are represented in the curriculum in an articulated way, preschool through grade 12. That's exactly why in a standardized assessment, which is aligned to the standards, that's one view of what a child can know and do. I'm really glad that you referenced vision of the graduate, because that actually provides, it's not only an alignment to UDL and the tenets of UDL, it provides the opportunity for our students to extend their learning and thinking in really creative and different ways. So that's part of, when we talk about curriculum design, that's the content, the what, the instruction is how, and then the assessment is how do we know. And that's why when we make a shift in content and curriculum, we have to simultaneously be thinking about what we're doing with assessment. And so we'll be engaging our staff in professional learning around assessment as we make shifts in the curriculum.
I mean, just as a follow-up then, if, again, we're trying to encourage those skills and vision of a graduate. If a teacher sees that a student is really demonstrating significant academic curiosity, the creativity and how they're approaching something that might be a very difficult topic. In my experience, a lot of times the grading doesn't necessarily take into account an ability for a teacher to kind of have that be a part of the grade, because the rubric is extremely formulaic and it might actually deduct points if they didn't, and I'm just saying that the degree of difficulty in the academic integrity of what the students are demonstrating, I feel is really important to also kind of be factored into how they're being assessed, so that we are encouraging those skills and competencies of vision of the graduate and encouraging kids to take those academic risks. And I'm not sure how right now the assessments are reflecting that. And this is obviously, it's a more of an intangible that is probably more difficult for our teachers to kind of put to task. And I'm just curious how you're approaching that.
Francis, or can you?
Yeah, I'll just, address that as best I can. But if I can go back to understanding by design, I mean, part of the beauty of it is that if we're designing an essay at the end, then the old-fashioned way, of course, is I'm going to have a unit of The Great Gatsby. I go chapter by chapter, and it's like, oh yeah, I need to have an assessment at the end. So we'll have students write an essay on the symbolism of the green light. Now, as an aside, I mean, we should end that practice, and no student should ever write that paper again in God's green earth, because it's been done a million times. But I'll just say, if you begin at the end, right, it affords you two things. You can have some of the strands of the rubric reflect some writing strategies that you do along the way. So rather than have it be formulaic, like you're saying, you have some very specific things that you're asking kids to demonstrate and master on that. And then I would say too, at the process, if you start at the end and we have a vision of the graduate embedded into it, we have creativity there. And so it would stand to reason that we could come up with a performance task that allows and privileges and highlights students' risk-taking and creativity when it comes to the thinking that they display there. And I'll just say that we've talked a little bit before, earlier this year, that say in the humanities, we're dealing with some outside forces right now that really make it imperative that our writing assignments are very unique and allow students to be very creative, because we're at a stage where otherwise, if we go back to the same formulaic kinds of essays that we've historically done, those can be written with the touch of a button. And so I think a lot of these forces are coming together at the right time to highlight some of the things that you're talking about.
I would just add also that in stage 2, which you didn't have access to see, but the hard copies here, that we, in every single unit, there is an opportunity for us to put traditional assessments, but also performance tasks. That's the way UBD is designed. So those performance tasks really touch upon what Shirley and Francis were saying in terms of allowing that differentiation, allowing that creativity. Risk-taking is a vision of the graduate competency that you will see in all our units in stage 1. It's something, Robin, that as you're speaking, we believe in, and that's part of what UBD design kind of supports.
Thank you. Greg, I'm not sure if you're still on. Do you have other questions? No. Okay.
No, good.
Thank you.
I'll just say quickly on this topic, I very much appreciate our leadership's, administrative leadership and us and Amy's leadership. We're light years from where we've been. When we talk about coherent systems, this is a perfect example of alignment, coherence, accessibility for parents, accessibility coordination for staff, building curriculum live. You go back anyway, it's just so much better, so positioned well moving forward. I want to thank the team for it. This doesn't happen like without this type of leadership. It just doesn't happen. It can't happen really because it's not set up for the coordination. So thank you, Amy, for your leadership in particular, and all our department's leadership over the last couple of years on this topic. We're in a good spot, and the rollout. I think consumption-wise, we're probably full of information at the moment. Our intent would be to roll this out at the start of the year, just information-wise, and with an excitement about it and an inclusion about it.
Yeah, that was, but my question before, like, we are overloaded with emails from you, so. All right, moving on. We will go to our literacy update. Mrs. Fuller, back to that again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is this on? Okay. Good morning, everybody. My favorite topic, our pre-K to 3 literacy update. And I will be brief because we gave you a comprehensive update in May, but we have been busy since then. Thank you. Since May and June, we've had some work done in communication, leadership planning. We've done a site visit, done some curriculum, have plans for some curriculum work and action research, professional learning. So I'll just go through all of that. In terms of communication, the end of May, we met virtually with the entire pre-K to 12 steering committee. We gave them an update on the work of the core review team, as well as talked about next steps for them, including doing some focus groups, digging into the surveys, establishing a vertical team for next year to continue our work. And then we met with the pilot teachers as well to talk about logistics of the pilot. Some of the some of the teachers who are on the pilot, participating in the pilot, were on the core review team, but not all of them. So we wanted them to know in terms of materials, in terms of professional learning, timeline, feedback, all of that. So that was really helpful. We established a Q&A opportunity for them and an ongoing like Google Doc for them to share as things came up. We also let them know that they would be getting their teachers' manuals before school ends so they can take them home for the summer, and that is happening. In terms of leadership, our committee co-chairs have met with Houghton Mifflin. They've been very helpful. They actually have a pilot manager. They detailed the professional learning plan beginning in August and going throughout the fall. We talked about materials, again, teacher materials, but also student materials, as well as logistics, looping in our IT department so that teachers and students will have digital access. We engaged in a site visit. Branford implemented Into Reading 2 years ago. They started. This was really their first full year. It was the only district that we could find that was implementing that. They were delightful. They hosted 11 of our educators for a full day. We met with their ELA coordinator, their literacy coach, kindergarten through 3rd grade classroom teachers. We got into multiple classrooms. They were amazing. They took time out of their day to debrief with our teachers and answer any questions. So that was really helpful. And they told us their whole process, the pros, the cons, how they're supplementing. So it was really great for our teachers to participate in that. In terms of curriculum work, we have teachers who are participating in the pilot that are going to spend some time digging into the teachers' manuals and the online platform, which is very robust. There's a lot of materials. We're developing a scope and sequence, and we're planning specifically for the implementation in terms of instruction and assessment, what that will look like. It's very different than what we're doing now. So how will we compare apples to apples? And just to review the details, which I know we've shared before, but the pilot is going to run through August through December. And we've told teachers they'll have materials for the whole year. If they want to continue, they can continue. If they feel like it's not meeting the needs of our students, they can go back to our current programming. We have 2 grade level teams across the district that are participating, 3 in first grade. So we have a lot of representation. We have opportunities. Again, HMH is providing in-person professional learning during our opening days. They are providing virtual monthly meetings with our teachers. They have an online coach. We have allocated PLC time, not only for the teams within the schools, but across the district. And we have mechanisms for ongoing feedback and data collection, including classroom observations and some tools that we have where we think we can compare apples to apples. So that's part of our action research, digging into all of that. And in addition, for our teachers who are not piloting the inter-reading resource, we also have some teachers that are piloting some vocabulary instruction. And I talked about this last time, but teachers have looked at these 3 resources. Some teams want to pilot new writing units because they do include grammar instruction and spelling specifically. We also have some parts of bookworms, particularly comprehension assessments that teachers want to pilot to enhance our current program. In addition, we have developed formative assessments in comprehension for all grades because that was an area that it is a little subjective and teachers wanted some more concrete evidence. Part of that in 3 through 5 is embedding IABs and which are focused interim assessments, into our curriculum throughout the year as an instructional tool rather than just having a test prep unit. The other thing that came out was fluency instruction. It's already embedded in our curriculum, but we wanted to really identify those high leverage fluency strategies for whole class and small group and make sure that teachers are aware of where there is time for this on the schedule and what the structures are in place. We're also adding a words per minute to running records. We haven't had that as a benchmark, even though we do test oral reading fluency through AIMSweb. So this is a more formative type of assessment. And we're just busy with this. I talked about our professional learning as well. PLCs and grade level meetings, particularly in the primary grades, are continuing to focus on the science of reading and just comparing all of the resources and digging into what's best meeting the needs of all of our students.
Thank you, Julie. Again, this is exciting that we are now at the point where this is actually going to be piloted and we're moving forward. How were the 11 teachers chosen to be a pilot classroom? Or maybe it's not 11, but sorry, 11 visited Brandford.
There were 11 that visited Brandford. For the pilot classrooms, we just really we had a mix of people that were on the core review team that had really dug into the program and just some people that would be open, enthusiastic, flexible thinkers. It was just sort of, we wanted 2 grade levels and 3. And so we just divided it up
So
really.
some teachers raised their hand. Were there other teachers that were like tapped to say, can you please do this?
I think that everybody was willing.
Okay.
There wasn't anybody that was not interested in participating.
Okay. And then the cost for Houghton Mifflin, is there any, or I don't believe,
For the pilot, no, there's no cost, which is
That's-
surprising.
kind of surprising. Okay.
Mhm.
I have a question. The vocabulary and grammar resources that you're using, are those only right now for K through 3 that are being piloted? Or do those resources also extend K through 5 or middle school if you would like?
They do extend K through 5. They do actually, some of them extend into sixth grade at least that I'm aware of. So it will all depend on budget. And how many people are, that is voluntary. So we did ask, and we do want people that are sort of staying the course to what we have and people that are trying some new things so that we really do have comparison. And we gave people for vocabulary some options. So most of the teachers that have gotten back to me are interested in piloting Word Love because it aligns with what they're doing now. It's aligned to the science of research. It's simple for them. They can see where the time would fit in because it's aligned to the current read alouds. So that's most of the feedback that I've gotten.
But is that you're saying it's voluntary, so only some teachers are choosing to pilot this vocabulary resource?
Mhm.
So for the kids who are not in those pilots, is the intent that after the pilots are completed, that we would potentially roll it out then to all grades?
Yes, yes. And there are teachers that have other ways of teaching vocabulary that they've used. So we are really going to compare like, what does that look like in each classroom? And is there evidence that students' vocabulary, and basically we measure that by Ames Web, really. That's the only standardized measure that we have. But is there increase in student vocabulary achievement?
So is the intent then at the end of this that the pilot for vocabulary and also for grammar, just in terms of consistency across schools, across grades, so that all of the students, regardless of which teacher they have, will get the same kind of tools and knowledge building for vocabulary, grammar, et cetera? I mean, that's really kind of where I'm going with
Right,
this. Since it's
right.
voluntary right now, I just want to understand that.
We really want to make sure that this resource, that the new units of study, that is meeting our needs and that
Okay.
does in fact improve students' grammar before we purchase it for everybody, so it won't be consistent. If we see, and we look at writing across the year, we do pre and post writing assessments for every unit. So if we see, wow, there's just a huge increase in, student sentence structure and grammar and mechanics, that might be when we look at that and say, do we have money to really roll this out? So
Okay. But that's not part of the science of reading kind of K-3 waiver
it's not.
process.
It's not, we did get some feedback about writing, but that's more for us. We have identified that
Okay.
as a need for our
I see it
district.
as two parallel
Mhm.
initiatives,
Mhm.
for lack of a better word. So we saw on Tuesday night that if interreading pilot goes well, that there is a cost of $650,000 to implement it for the fall of 25. What is the cost of adding another vocabulary grammar resource?
Minimal.
Minimal, okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Other questions? I think Greg had to drop, so I think it's just you and I.
I don't have more questions on that.
Okay. Anything else you would like to share with us? Okay. Okay. Thank you for your work on that. Well, fingers crossed that we had some good results in the fall.
Exciting.
Moving on to public comments.
Okay. If anyone in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please either come up to the podium and/or raise your hand. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please note the time with the chair.
There's nobody in person.
There are no raised
There are no
hands.
raised hands. Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn? All right, we